hotter the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
Walking outside labyrinthian over. Oh, we're recording.
We're recording. It's fine. It's great.
I know every outcome such a come down.
I have a question for you.
Pregunta para mí?
How sad do you want people to be at your funeral?
How sad do I want? No, I think the idea was always that people would be like celebrating.
Sure, like that's what everyone says.
Yeah, but that's not usually the case.
Well, okay, because you love music, and it's your chance to make your family finally listen to those sad songs they won't listen to. Right? And so I constantly go through my funeral playlist.
Absolutely.
Like, is it the sad songs that like you have to listen to all 7 minutes of this Iron and Wine song to really get me? Or should we have some fun with the Beach Boys?
Man, dude, you know what I view the songs at my funerals the same way that I would view an end credit song for a movie about me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because I used to work you were a projectionist.
Absolutely.
I worked at a movie theater. Music for the credits is a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
Like I did a lot of sweeping.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The ones that accidentally, because it sucks when they don't nail it. When it's just like a random, like the B side of a score that didn't work, or it's just a random indie pop song that they just like shoehorned in.
So I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of where I was like, "Damn, you guys kind of crushed this." Was The Prestige with Christian Bale?
What does that end with?
A Tom York song from Radiohead.
Oh yeah,
and it's really good.
That would fit the vibe really well.
It did, and it was fucking cool. And obviously Wes Anderson's Life Aquatic, like
sure.
Fucking amazing. It was
he always nails it.
David Bowie, like you're sweeping to David Bowie and shit like that.
One that you wouldn't expect to nail it, but absolutely nails it is Transformers.
What was at the end? Linkin Park?
I belong, and it's like some Linkin Park song, but it's just like it's like perfect for the vibe of that movie, and it like ends with Linkin Park screaming.
Yeah, I remember. It's funny that we're talking about this. I remember the movie Invincible with Mark Wahlberg, where like some Joe Schmo he gets to be on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
Because they did it was a true story, like some random tryout, and this garbage man was like, "I'll be on the Eagles." And the score at the end of that movie is just very introspective. And I remember one time sweeping, and I just sat down in the chair, and it was just like, and this music, this beautiful like orchestral music is playing, and yeah. Point being, I definitely find those synonymous. Like, yeah, and it would probably be like a Modest Mouse song for me.
Oh, Modest! I wouldn't have.
Yeah, Modest Mouse was like a huge. It's like
you went through a big Modest Mouse phase.
Massive, absolutely massive. When I started experimenting with psychedelics and all of the drugs, Modest Mouse was right there with me.
That was your thing, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I actually don't even. Oh, well, then one time me and my brother went to a Modest Mouse concert and we did Molly, and they were bad.
So
really
my experience
bad.
with Modest Mouse is like I was kind of getting into them. They were playing like at a free concert, and like in Huntington Beach every year they do a big concert for free on the beach. It's awesome.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's cool. And like we ride our bikes there. Like it's fun. But Modest Mouse was headlining. I was like, all right, I'll start checking them out. I'm like 8 years too late. I should probably get into this. And then I was learning more about them, and like he doesn't always like to perform. I was like, I don't know if this is for me.
They're not good.
Yeah,
they make incredible recorded music.
Sure.
There's just too much going on.
Yeah.
They literally had to stop it, but like in the beginning of 2 songs, just to be like, oh, let's make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. And it was like, dude, this is just not working out.
Yeah.
But what was your answer? For what?
I don't know. I keep going. That's why I'm just trying to feel you out on.
Yeah, so it would probably be like a Modest Mouse, My Morning Jacket, or Radiohead song or some shit.
Oh, like some sad My Morning Jacket.
I mean, dude, I will be there when you die.
I will be there when you die. Like that's the best one.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies. Hopefully you guys have figured out what songs are playing at your funeral.
Let's get comments on one of our posts with your funeral song. Your first funeral song.
Please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, on Spotify, that'll be our question.
Yeah.
What song is playing at your funeral?
Mm-hmm. What's the big one?
Speaking of Spotify, open up your phone and please rate and review us.
Yep.
That goes a long way.
Like, I want the song when your montage is going on. You know when you do the montage during the funeral?
Of course.
Yeah, that's the song. That's the song I want to know. Okay. I would say that let's go on to happier things, but let's not. Let's go on to sadder things.
Let's learn about people dying.
Woo!
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies. What part? Part 5?
Part 5.
We're at part 5 on our Masters of the Air series. Let's fucking get it.
Let's do it. I know we have said this at the start of every episode of this series so far, but strap in, folks. The story is intense, and it doesn't slow down today. We're going to cover from October 1943 all the way to D-Day landing, which is about like 9-10 months of time, and it's wild.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to remember as we go through that I was just kind of, as I was re-going over my notes and kind of looking at different issues that might come up and ways to clean it up, the numbers are going to get very, very big. Like, they're going to get outrageously big because of production that America kicks in. So just try to go with it. It gets really hard and confusing to follow certain parts because the numbers just like explode and then condense and then explode and condense because of all the industrial parts of World War II that we don't learn about all the time when we are in middle school and high school.
No.
All right. Let's start with October 1943. The losses from the past few missions were extreme. These are the ones that Spencer covered in the last mission.
We got Hamburg, Regensburg, Schweinfurt.
Schweinfurt. What a big, big thing that was.
Yeah.
And that was in the most recent Masters of the Air, all the Schweinfurt stuff. I thought they did a great job with that.
It was fucking, the newest episodes are phenomenal so far.
Yeah. So McCarthy's wife, rightfully so in my mind, she started getting attacked by family members of servicemen about whether their loved ones were alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine what those families were going through back home. They would have been sifting through all this propaganda, the letters from their soldiers, and any networks that they hopefully created to figure out how bad the missions really were. Because they're having to deal with, like, the letters home are saying, like, things are intense. And the propaganda is like, we're doing great. And then they're getting phone calls probably from other service family members saying that they finally got the letter that their son isn't coming home.
Yeah, think about, this is definitely something that we gloss over now, but
Yes.
we didn't think about how slowly information traveled when somebody died in Europe and your family is chilling in the United States waiting for a fucking letter.
And we're going to keep going into it today, but the political propaganda machine is absolutely moving at this moment.
Bro.
Because they have to keep the industry moving and pumping out stuff, so they have to keep funds up. So they're absolutely in no rush to give the reality, the stark reality of casualties.
Is Captain America going on his tour yet to get bonds?
I don't know.
That joke's not for everybody, I guess.
Well, I was like, Captain America, like, is there somebody? I was trying to think of someone named their aircraft Captain America.
It was a stupid joke.
No, it was a great joke.
Thanks, dude.
Appreciate
Shout out to
you.
all you Marvel fans out there.
Are people still Marvel fans?
I don't know. I'm pretty exhausted by it all, to be honest.
It is exhausting. Okay, let's go back to it. I don't think it would have taken a concerned family long to figure out that the reports coming back home weren't accurate. As a concerned brother, I read the news closely and critically while my brother is deployed. So that's a new part of my life since my brother's joined the Navy, is that now when he's deployed, I'm definitely reading everything and being like, but what's really going on? Because I want to know. I know they won't tell us right away, and so I just want to know.
Yeah. Is he deployed?
No, not currently.
Okay.
But also, I don't always know when he's deployed.
Right. But
So,
it's, in theory, coming.
potentially.
Who knows?
If you want a dose of empathy into this lens, watch the West Wing Christmas episode with Mrs. Lanningham, who is the best character. When she's talking about her sons dying in the Vietnam War, her sons were doctors and they were drafted in the Vietnam War in the plot of the episode, and she says, "It's hard when it happens so far away, you know, because with the noises and the shooting, they had to be so scared. It's hard not to think that right then and there, they needed their mother.
Yeah.
Anyway, I miss my boys."
Yeah.
And that really, even before, my brother joined, it really helped me understand why families feel the need to like need the information right now, like selfishly. Like, I don't care about propaganda. I don't care about intel for the enemy. Like, I need to know. And then when you hear that story, you're like, of course they need to know. They're worried about their kids screaming for their moms.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the moms selfishly want to know. Like, I'm not going to blame them for that.
Absolutely. For those of you who've been listening to us for a long time, you've probably listened to our Mother's Day episode. If you haven't, go back and check that out.
That's a fun episode. You should listen to it.
It's a fun episode. But our mom, I think, like, so for instance, both of our moms, me and Kevin's moms, have dealt with their sons deploying. And I think it's interesting to hear how they both coped. And my mom tried to just stay busy, to be like, oh, I'm going to do like the Blue Star Mom things just to keep my mind busy and feel like I'm doing something. You know what I mean? Same with your mom. You know, she was always doing different things to keep her mind busy. And there were days where she did not do great, where she was like, I'm spiraling hardcore. So I can only imagine when people deploy, their families deploy with them.
Absolutely. Thank you for that side quest. Back to the missions. So we're going to go November 3rd, and this would be an attack on Wilmshaven. Wilmshaven? This fight would be within range of fighter escorts, Lockheed P-38 Lightnings. Okay, so we're going to start talking about a lot of fighters today. So this is the P-38 Lightning, and also shout out to user DB Fly Guy, because I have started having fun looking at the different fighters and which ones are different and how they are different. And
nerd alert!
I understand it now. I'm probably not going to get that into it, but I do understand. It's fun. Yeah. I had fun like going through them and looking at like the Air Force archive and like, oh, this is cool. Okay, let's talk about the P-38 Lightning. The P-38 Lightning was a paradoxical craft. It was, I think anyway, fiercer than the Thunderbolt with greater range, but it was more unreliable for things like cold weather. The Thunderbolts were meant to be an answer to the rockets that we learned about in Spencer's episode in the last mission, because remember, the rockets started becoming a thing, and both ground-to-air rockets and rockets fired from those Luftwaffe. I don't remember which fighters were shooting those, if it was the Wolves or the other ones.
The fuck Wolves.
It is the fuck Wolves. In total, 566 heavies and 378 fighters took to the air for this mission. It's crazy.
That's a fucking insane number.
Those are like baby numbers compared to what we get to by the end of this, before D-Day. It's crazy. The great victory for the 8th was that the weather didn't stop them. That's what we're going to focus on right now. The other new addition to the American war machine was the retractable domes that contained air-to-ground radar, the H-2X, codenamed Mickey Mouse, or Mickey. Okay, so Miller does a good job explaining what this system is. It is this is from Miller. A high-frequency electrical impulse was transmitted downward through a revolving antenna underneath the bomber, and this beam of energy scanned the Earth's surface. The reflected signals picked up by the antenna produced a crude map-like image on a cathode ray tube, or oscilloscope. In the bomber, dark areas for water, light area for ground, bright areas for cities. When the Pathfinder planes dropped sky marker flares for the rest of the bomber stream. Okay, so this is like a very crude radar, essentially. And these were strapped to, I think, both B-17s and B-24s. I know they were strapped to the B-17s. I think also B-24s. But basically, you'd have a guy in your unit that was called the Pathfinder.
It's dope.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's
God,
cool.
What a cool title. What'd you do? I was the Pathfinder.
I was the Pathfinder.
And they would be flying pretty far ahead, I think, or at least, towards the front. And they'd be flying high, and they'd be taking down radar. And when they saw what they thought was the right spot, they would shoot down some flares so that the rest of the combat wing, would be able to drop bombs near that flare.
Dude, it's pretty crazy in the show when you see them shoot the flares.
Yes.
They're like, well, I did not. That was
I didn't realize, they just literally stuck a gun in there.
Fucking crazy.
Yes. So how well did this do? Well, they still missed their target today.
Yay!
Some of this stuff is confusing, guys. But I guess it was close enough to where they thought it was good. It's confusing. It seemed like the mission was a failure, but everybody was pretty jazzed.
Cut to Walter Cronkite. Oh, this is the most accurate thing that we've had ever. Yeah, the news was just singing its praises.
Okay, so why was this a big deal? It did help in 3 very specific and overlapping ways. First, it allowed the 15th Air Force to attack parts of Germany that the 8th couldn't reach. The 15th, stationed in southern Italy, was able to hit East and South Germany. But because of the Alps, the weather was too rough to hit without the Mickey system. Second, Mickey was able to allow the 8th and the 15th to keep up bombing pressure despite the weather. Remember last episode how I kept saying all the plans were dumb because Nazi industry was incredible and could just rebuild, thereby requiring constant pressure? This solves that issue, essentially. This was more pronounced in the winter campaign, when Europe's weather really shines, or lack thereof. 3. It meant planes could fly high enough to significantly reduce casualties on missions.
Good.
So those are 3 very... I do understand, even though it missed, why they would be interested in it.
Yes.
It helps in very clear ways. Like those are big flaws in the American system that we're having to deal with at this time period, this winter of 43/44. Quick facts. The Pathfinders were part of every single winter mission for 1943-44.
What?
Yep, involving the 8th, it was in every single mission.
That's insane.
The amount of visual bombing runs went from 50% to 10%.
Oh.
So this is how big of a deal this Pathfinder thing is. I don't think we can really overstate that. The fact that essentially no one is going to fly missions without one now.
Got it. Okay, massive. Big deal.
Yeah, and I think they are the 482nd bomb group. Like, I think that's their bomb group name, and then they get dispersed into different combat wings. If people wanted to look up more about them. I'm pretty sure they're the 482nd. This is all good, yes? No. Maybe. This is how I am when I'm reading this. This is good? And then I read the next sentence and say, no. And then I read the next sentence, maybe.
Dude, it's a
roller coaster.
I was just gonna say, reading this book is a wild ride, folks. You're definitely leaving certain chapters like not sure how to feel about this.
Yes. It did mean that America had to abandon hope of precision bombing for area bombing. The crews called it blind bombing. Hap Arnold, being the politician that he is, told Eaker that he needed to call it bombing through overcast. If you are like, hey, wasn't precision bombing the only reason we had to attack during the day? Don't worry. I don't think you were the only one, but I think it's in for a penny, in for a pound at this point.
Right.
We're in 3 years into this thing.
Right. We've gone too far.
Doesn't that suck?
It's really depressing.
Every time I do one of these, like what Miller sometimes calls like grim calculus, and you're like doing this math, and you're like, how many people are dying just because we don't want to admit the wrong thing at this point because we think it'll hurt the program too much.
Right.
Which is valid, but it's stupid.
It's very depressing.
And I keep thinking, like, I hate them for making that choice. I also don't want to be them because I think you have to make that choice sometimes.
Right, because you and I wouldn't have done that.
No. But we probably wouldn't have had a program, you know? Like,
no, we would have been like, you guys, I taught football at West Point. Let's go drink.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. During the winter season, and I might not have understood this correctly, it seems like Germany lost 12 of its best aces. So 12 aces from Germany were credited with shooting down over 1,000 Allied aircraft.
Whoa, wait. On like just pure happenstance or what?
Well, I think this is starting Miller's showing that this new system, along with the new fighters, is that all of a sudden these experienced Luftwaffes that were essentially just doing whatever they wanted to are starting to get challenged, and they're starting to go down too.
Okay. It's a turning point in the aerial combat.
And it's not a complete turn yet. That will come with Doolittle, but I think the Mickey system and that there's the Thunderbolts and the Lightnings, that there's more of them, that they're actually out there. It is suddenly giving the Luftwaffe some problems.
Okay.
Much needed problems.
Probably doesn't help that their commander put a bullet in his mouth.
Yeah, that wasn't great. Although it seemed like Gallard is pretty solid.
Golland something like that.
Yeah. Adolf Golland.
Yeah, great name.
Yeah.
Was Adolf just a popular name back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Mike was really huge during that day, in the 1940s, and then in Germany, it was like, oh, we really like Adolf.
It would suck if you were like 3 when Hitler is like, it's like 1944 and you're like a 2-year-old and you're named Adolf. And then like, what do you do with the rest of your life?
You change your name.
You probably change your name.
You 100% change your name.
Yeah.
Do you think, how many Adolfs do you think there are in Germany right now?
I hope not a lot.
0.
I
zero.
hope it's 0.
Yeah.
I'm not naming my kid Andrew Jackson. Or Halsey. Like
Donald.
Donnie. I'm not naming my kid Donald. This was a symptom of many Luftwaffe problems that ended with a decline in the strength by the spring of 1944, which is what we'll get to in a minute. That the Luftwaffe is going down a little bit. The Thunderbolts boasted a 3-1 advantage against the Luftwaffe, the Messerschmitts. Yeah. So it's the Messerschmitt 109s and the Focke-Wulfs 190s. This led to a couple important events for D-Day. Wait, and if you're watching, we have the Thunderbolts here. So they are just like what you would imagine a fighter would be. And then we have the Messerschmitts up top, and then we have the Focke-Wulfs down below.
Yeah, so the Thunderbolt looks like your classic World War II fighter.
Absolutely.
Plane.
It looks like what America could just pump out a lot of.
Yes. It's the Ford, Model T of planes.
I think... No, I'm not going to get into the engine stuff because I'll be wrong about it.
Okay.
I was writing some of it down. I was like, it's too much.
Go ask your questions to DB Fly Guy on Reddit. He's real nice.
He is nice.
Yeah, no, he's legitimately interactive with us.
I like him. Because the losses were getting bad, Gallard, so it is Gallard. Adolf Gallard is the guy who takes over the Luftwaffe after what's his face shoots himself. Gallard moved their planes to the Rhine River. Folks, this is the same Rhine River
here we go.
that Caesar crossed to fight against the Gauls and the Celts and the Germans back in 44 BC. It's crazy to me.
Sick plug, Kevin. Go listen to our Caesar series. It's fucking amazing.
I love ancient stuff. Okay. I'm sorry. Their idea was to focus on bombers without the Thunderbolts. The Allies expected and wanted this because it cleared northern France for an invasion. Lesson here? Well, the escort planes were so impactful that they achieved many pieces of the point-blank mission simply by existing. So the point-blank mission is supposed to set up so that we can do Overlord, so that we can do the D-Day stuff. Simply by actually now having the fighters and forcing all the Luftwaffe to go back to the Rhine and kind of leave some of France undefended, that achieves the goal that they were not able to achieve for like the 2 years or whatever it was they were trying to do, all the bombing. Like, it's just crazy sometimes how moving the chess piece and not taking and not actually fighting is the most valid strategy.
Yeah. It's also crazy to see all the different operations that led up to D-Day.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, this operation turned into this operation, and then we have Operation Overlord. It's like, damn.
Yeah,
Did not realize all that.
Although it is unfair to say it was just the Thunderbolts, the story is extremely similar to that of Leyte Gulf. America's World War II strength came from its ability to mass produce. Reminder from that series... My current view of World War II, America's Navy, their naval supremacy, was in its ability to outproduce Japan. We essentially were going toe-to-toe with Japan, Navy to Navy, but we produced an entire second Navy.
Right.
And that's what really pushed us over the line when it came to like tonnage, which is a whole thing. You military historians and your measuring of tonnage is crazy to me.
Sick plug, Kevin. Go listen to our Lady Gulf.
Dude, we've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, Germany had an amazing air force, but their mass production was nowhere near America's. Miller also points out that Hitler was too slow in engaging a total war level of production until after the defeat of Stalingrad, and that was in 1943. Can I
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What is your theory on the idea that he couldn't declare total war, Hitler? Like, do you think his citizens just wouldn't have been down for that?
No. I really Hitler's fascinating. For those that are wondering what we're talking about, Hitler is in a total war. He's fighting on both fronts. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because if you read some of his stuff after World War I, he is so harsh against Germany for its fighting of two fronts at the same time. And he does what they thought they couldn't do or what they wanted to do in World War I. They take France quickly. And I think he just thought all of their manpower should be towards like tanks and setting up that eastern push, the Ostfront. Like that was the answer. And if he could just take Russia, like they would give them so much room and so much like natural resources, they'd be good. But I'm not sure. Hitler's fucking weird.
Email us at battlebuddiespod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I genuinely do not know why. I don't know. My theory is that the citizens wouldn't have been on board. Like I don't think he could have convinced them to do so.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's hard. This is the problem with like asymmetrical political structures.
Right.
Is it's just reliant on this guy making the right choice every single time.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen.
No way. Say what you will about some of our recent leaders of America, but at least they aren't the only ones in power.
Yeah.
It's really the last two presidents have not been my favorites, and I'm really thankful that other people have also been in charge at the same time.
Absolutely.
For numbers, just so we can really visualize the differences between like America producing and Germany producing. Germany produced 40,000 planes in 1944. America produced 94,000.
Holy shit.
If you combine all allies together, they outproduced Germany by 400%.
Oh, Jesus. Well, yeah, you're going to lose,
You're going to lose that.
You're going to lose.
Because then that goes back to your question. Why would he not have engaged that in like 41?
I'm really confused why he thought that he would be able to pull this off without industry.
I wonder if part of it has to do with him taking the command of the Luftwaffe. Like, if he would have let that guy
I see. So
do his thing,
mm-hmm.
maybe he could have made it happen. But I'm sure Gallard's like, well, I don't want to end up like that guy.
So he got too cocky?
Yeah, because he takes over a ton. He takes over essentially all military like decisions by the end of when they start getting pushed back from the Eastern Front. Like, he's in charge of everything, which is so dumb.
Yeah, so he's putting his hand in too many pots. He was half-assing two things rather than whole-assing one thing.
And he had good leaders. Germany has historically great generals.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, let's talk about ice and coldness.
All right.
So, ice is a huge deal in this winter campaign. The Luftwaffe sometimes could not even get into the air because of how extreme the ice was. It's more than just like freezing over their windscreens and cockpits. Like, it would freeze up the engines. It would just get really bad. And for the Allies, and we're talking about bombers here, they struggled in a lot of ways too. The missions were long. Something that I think Spencer started bringing up last episode. You forget these are like 5-6 hour missions. At least sometimes. They're going all the way into central Germany and back.
They're flying to fucking Africa.
Yeah. After. They're going to go over the Alps and go to Africa.
Yes.
Crazy. And the temperature was 60 below.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Because they're 20,000 feet in deep
dangerous.
Like, there's no pressurization.
No. Yeah.
Wild.
It's freezing, bro. It's freezing. Hashtag cigarettes.
Yeah.
I'd be smoking cigarettes.
Absolutely.
Woo.
I don't know if you can get a flame up there.
Yeah, good point.
You'd have to do some dip.
And I would.
Yeah, you'd be a trucker all day on that.
Yes, sir. After I drink my flask of whiskey, I would fucking start dipping.
There was a toilet. This was a question Hannah had when we were watching Masters of Air. How do they go potty? How do they make pee-pee?
A bucket.
There was a toilet, but it was usually thrown out because it would take your skin off when you got up.
Because of the metal?
Yeah, and just because it was so cold, you can't put your skin on anything.
It would be like ice, a block of ice. Yeah.
Because remember, if from the first episode that we did, when they would, maybe the second episode, when they take off their gloves to like fix a gun, they would lose all the skin. They would all come off.
Can you imagine what that would fucking feel like?
In my nightmares, I do. It's like the fear you have when you like pull like a little hangnail.
God,
like, no, one's gonna
stop. God.
There was a hose for peeing, but it would usually freeze and splash back at the urinator. So they just went on the floor.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Sam Halpert, which it stinks that this is probably this guy's like only claim to fame. He would tie a string to his ding-dong so that he could find it when he needed to pee. Hence the yo-yo. That poor guy. I'm sure he did really brave things, but he's going to be known as the guy who tied a string to his ding-dong.
Yeah. Damn, dude. It takes that much effort to find it, huh?
Well, it's like funny, but you can't.
It's so cold, your dick gets smaller.
Yeah, it gets too small and they can't find it. And you can't pee your pants because then you get frostbite all over your groin.
It's fucked up arrangement.
Man. It's just so weird watching and reading about. We're so advanced technologically, compared to us 40,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. And yet, we're still people and we got to pee and poop.
Yes, sir.
And it absolutely impacts how our civilization advances with technology.
Yeah, it's funny. Just because Always Sunny did a whole episode about that, like the whole bathroom signs thing.
Oh, okay.
And the conclusion they came up was like, just call it an animal shit house. Like we
Yes.
all shit.
Call it the
piss.
grossest thing you can.
Yeah, whatever.
It was so cold that German and Allied planes would sometimes have to pass each other because all 4 of their guns would be frozen solid. The ice was also so intense that it could accumulate way down and crash your bomber because the bombers were so big. Frostbite hospitalized more men than battle wounds.
Say that again.
The frostbite hospitalized more men than battle wounds.
Isn't that wild? Oh, man. I would probably be relieved if I got frostbite. Like, whew, not going out next time.
Well, unless it's not bad enough and you're going to have to go back.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm serious. For sure, I would be the guy, like, you're not sidebarring me until I do my 25. Like, I'm going to do those as fast as I fucking can. I'm not sitting with that over. It's the, what do you call it? It's the sword of Damocles. Do you know that story?
Mm-mm.
It's an ancient story, and so this guy was born with a sword hovering over his head,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to fall and kill him one day, but he doesn't know when it's going to happen. So he spends his whole life with a sword over his head. And the like moral is like, what's the sword over your head? And for us, it's nuclear bombs.
Got it.
What is it for these guys? It's these 25 missions.
Yeah,
like,
these flights. Wow, holy shit. Okay, Sword of Damocles.
On a plus side, Colonel Malcolm Grow, a surgeon, invented a vest to help protect men from flak explosions after his research showed 80% of injuries were from flak splinters. By flak splinters, meaning that the explosion itself didn't kill a lot of the men. It was like the bleeding, and it was shrapnel, and it was hitting the plane, and then a small sliver would like cut you because we're flesh and meaty, and it just would kill us. He reduced casualties with this invention by 58%.
No shit.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
just some dude, some surgeon's like, I think I could solve this problem.
Yeah.
I love it.
And now we have flak jackets.
We have flak jackets. It came from this guy.
It's incredible.
It's crazy.
Human beings. Dude.
Yeah, just somebody deciding they wanted to do something about it. Like my favorite guy when I studied the Holocaust, Nicholas Winton.
What did he invent? Or what did
He just quietly saved hundreds of people and didn't tell anybody or his wife until years later when they found
Integrity.
out. Yeah, just did the right thing.
Altruistic.
All right, we're going to go from 1943, and now we're going into the end of the winter campaign, so we're going towards January. This is January 5th. This is going to be the final mission headed by Ira Eaker, our boy Eaker, before he gets transferred to Command Air Operations in the Mediterranean. This was, of course, not okay with Eaker. Eaker felt that it was Hap Arnold who'd betrayed him.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to get in a little bit of an argument.
They get a little bit of a tiff.
Mm-hmm.
He even writes a letter begging Arnold to reconsider. Arnold, and this shows how politically deft Arnold really was. Because it's not always apparent when I'm reading quotes and like passages from Arnold, like how politically aware he is. He's very aware of how to do this. He replied, congratulating Eaker on his new position. So Eaker sends him a letter saying, dude, do not send me to the Mediterranean. Let me keep the 8th. This is my baby.
Yeah.
And Arnold just sends back, congratulations on your new post.
What a dick.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you about this.
Man, that's crazy.
Cold-blooded.
In reality, that's just gaslighting.
Yeah, for
It's just
real.
like-
That really is gaslighting.
In reality, it was most likely Eisenhower's call, but Arnold probably did push for a more aggressive commander. Arnold and company were also thinking post-war. An independent Air Force depended on how their performance was perceived. Carl Spaatz was to take over. Spaatz was brought to help with the Normandy invasion because Eisenhower had a positive experience working with him in the past. There was a lot of political maneuvering and technical bureaucratic nonsense with a bunch of like stupid committee names like Supreme Dick Camp for Men with Big Dicks and stuff. I made most of that up, but they're ridiculously like egotistical, like Supreme Command of the Supreme Beings, and it's stupid. I hated it. The end result was that the 8th, if it even is the 8th even anymore because it's changed so much, was put in Eisenhower's boy, Lieutenant James H. Doolittle's hand. So our new power structure is going to be Eisenhower. Under him is going to be Spaatz. And then under him is going to be Doolittle. So that's what Arnold kind of had set up.
Dope. One of his grandsons was a pitcher for the Oakland Athletics.
Oh, really?
Doolittle, yeah.
I didn't know that. Doolittle is interesting enough to briefly cover. He was a daredevil stunt and race pilot who had an incredible understanding of flying.
So cool.
On leave, he went to MIT to get one of the first doctorates in aeronautic engineering.
What? No big deal.
So, we give these guys a hard time, but they're doing it, though.
Yeah.
Like, he may make some decisions that we don't agree with, but you can't say he's not committed to this idea.
And qualified.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. The first engineering degree for aeronautics
That's insane.
at MIT.
Yeah.
Wow.
You deserve this position. I will follow you.
He also developed high-octane fuel.
Developed high-octane fuel.
Just did that. He also developed something called blind flying. For blind flying, otherwise known as Mickey. So we're going to use that Mickey system. He's essentially one of the guys who was in charge of like creating the Mickey system.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And to prove that it could work, he proved the concept by covering his cockpit with a pitch black tarp, took off, flew around, and then landed.
Whoa.
Yeah. If this is making him sound like a prototype for Hal Moore, just wait. His men loved him because he was, and I quote, both a forceful leader and an approachable as a man.
That really is your gauge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hal Moore.
How close are you to Hal Moore?
Yeah.
Hal Moore is a leader of men.
Yeah.
In the Iliad, they call them shepherds of men. That's like the epitaph. He'd be shepherds of men, Hal Moore.
Of men.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or they are masters of the battle cry. But he's a shepherd of men.
Cool. Shepherd of men is dope.
Wait, I have a little story on this. So I was asking my father-in-law about the tarp thing. I was asking about blind flying. So it's called instrument flying sometimes, I think. Basically, what it is that if you can't see, you have instruments and gauges. That's why aircrafts have all these gauges, is because of this guy Doolittle, essentially, who rigged out a system where you could fly without being able to see. And I was asking my father-in-law, so like, have you ever done this before? And he said, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
So when you were training in the plane, sorry, DB Fly Guy, I don't remember the model. It's T something, but it's a little plane, and the instructor sits in the front, and then my father-in-law, Mark, would sit in the back. And they covered Mark's canopy with pitch black tarp, and the instructor took off, and then Mark had to fly it with using just the instruments to prove that he understood how they work.
And so, did he explain how that felt?
Yeah, so he said it was fine. Like, he understood how to do it, and it was like, he said it was fine. But, this is the thing, and we're going to get into this. Pilots sometimes have egos, and they're arrogant, and they like to show like how good they are.
Yeah.
So you can't land when you're on that tarp thing unless you're Doolittle, because it's not safe. So he gave back control to the instructor, and the instructor went to land, and then right before he landed, hit the throttle, went up 5 Gs on like this crazy bank, and to try to make Mark throw up, and so Mark had to throw up in his gloves.
Oh, he legit threw up.
Yeah, he said it's the only time he's ever thrown up flying.
Because of all the G's or what?
Because he was essentially blindfolded, and then without knowing it, got hit with 5 Gs.
So they were trolling?
Yeah, he was trolling them.
Dang, you pilots are crazy.
You guys are crazy. All right. This was, so him being like an approachable as a man, but a forceful leader. This was, I think, the view from pretty much everybody until he eventually has to raise the mission cap to 30, in which case nobody fucking likes him after that.
Yeah, that's not going to be great. But they're having to raise it because they just don't have enough pilots, right?
They have the ships, they have the planes, they don't have the men.
There it is. Boom.
We'll return to Doolittle in a moment. I want to just quickly go back to Eaker because I can sympathize with Eaker to a degree. I haven't agreed with everything Eaker's done, but the 8th in England was his baby, and it was finally up and running. Like, I do feel that, like, you work so hard to build a program, you make the hard choices, you have the demons that you're going to have to carry your whole life because you believe in this project and this idea and this mission, and then right as it's going, it's just taken from you because bureaucracy. And maybe that's the right call. Maybe people shouldn't have that power to see it all the way through. Maybe that helps. But I don't know. I feel for Eaker there.
I don't know, man. Like, think about it from like our perspective as teachers. Imagine, is it good for a school to change a principal every other year? No. I would argue no.
I would argue not. Anyway, to show the numbers about how much this is different, Doolittle now has, when he takes over, 1,300 battle-ready bombers and 1,200 fighters. We were dealing with like 30 bombers sometimes, and even in Spencer's episode, when they're getting ready for some of those like Black Thursday stuff, like they had maybe 100, maybe a couple hundred. Yep. Most of them were just like getting welded while they were getting taxied. Like It's totally different now.
That was a cool scene, by the way.
Oh, dude, that scene.
The welding welds. Yeah, that's great.
That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun television.
Television.
Casualties were still high on missions, though. But, and this is going to be a hard quote. I'm going to quote it because it's just a hard sentence. Spats and Doolittle hoped to surmount not by taking fewer casualties, but by building up their forces fantastically so that the percentage of losses would drop. Such is the brutal logic of wars and attrition. The listeners that didn't quite understand that all the way, the casualties are really high. And you basically have two choices because they're too high, right? You're getting flagged. You're going to get audited, essentially. You have two solutions. You can either reduce the number of casualties you have, or you just beef up your numbers so that the percentage goes down. It's fucked up, man.
Yeah. Wow.
That's some grim calculus.
That's like a perception thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Doolittle also changed the escort policy. And this is where Doolittle shines. Doolittle's escort policy stuff is...
Well, because escorts were like the biggest... That was what we learned about in our last episode. Yep. It was like, you need them.
And so Eaker did establish them. They have them.
Mm-hmm.
But Doolittle's going to change the way they operate. And it's going to fundamentally change how things work out.
Let's go.
Eaker's strategy was to have the fighters wait for the enemies to attack. They are essentially bodyguards, right? They fly next to the combat wings, and then when the Luftwaffe come and start trying to hit the bombers, then they engage. All right. Doolittle, like my father-in-law, believed that fighter pilots, or flyboys, are typically arrogant, aggressive, and competent as hell.
Yeah.
It's fun talking to people that were not fighter pilots about fighter pilots because they have a lot of like critical things to say, but they also always say some of the smartest guys in the room, and they are confident and they can back it up. Like they are the guys who were arrogant in your school, that there's like one every 4 years, but could also back it up. Like also did the work.
Yeah, it was annoying.
Yes,
but think about there's a lot of shout outs to our previous episodes here, but our UFO episode. When we're talking about the pilots that spoke in front of Congress, and they're like, oh man, your reputation's solid. Yeah. Like, you guys are fucking pilots, dude.
Doolittle's new policy was for fighters to fly ahead of the bombers and engage with whatever they could.
Yeah.
So the fighters just loved this. I didn't realize that this wasn't the strategy. And Miller goes through like some long like interactions about like how the fighters were so fucking stoked. Like they were literally like jumping and screaming in their room, like in their officer quarters. The bombers were furious. They were yelling essentially that you just killed us all. So what a hard decision to make. Like,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, that's rough.
How well did it work? And this is from Miller. He's quoting Adolf Gollard. So Adolf Gollard would say that the day the 8th Force fighters went on the offensive was the day Germany lost the air war. So that one decision, and it's a tactical decision, is going to change the course of the fighting for it now. It's going to fully turn now that
Incredible.
Luftwaffe. January was hard for the new leadership structure. I really like this story. This is I'm conflicted on Doolittle. I don't know if I like him or don't. I don't know. He's an interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
Doolittle called off a mission for weather. Spats basically called him a little bitch. And then Doolittle responded that he wasn't going to risk his men for an uncalculated risk. That takes balls because he just got put in this position.
Yeah.
Like, he literally just got put in, and then he's like, you got to go make things happen. He's like, I'm going to make things happen. That's why you're putting me in. I'm not going to send them out on this mission. It's too cloudy. And Spat's like, what the I put you in this to do the thing.
Yeah. You have one job.
Yes.
Good for him.
Then he did it again that month. Spats then made Doolittle fly with him in his personal B-17 named Boots.
Boots.
To inspect bases and, most likely, insult Doolittle for that entire day. So Doolittle is essentially in trouble and has to fly with Spats so Spats can just yell at him for how dumb he is the whole day. But the weather turned really bad, and they had a really, really hard landing. Like, it was pretty hairy there for a minute for them. And then Spats said, Jim, I see what you mean about uncalculated risks. And my takeaway from that is something that the more I study history and politics, in politics and life, never underestimate the power of personal experience. Like, remember when gay rights was first getting really pushed through when we were like teenagers?
I was just talking about that the other
Were
day.
you?
It was, I forget what proposition it was.
Yes.
But yeah, absolutely. I remember.
I remember when one of the last Republicans they needed to turn, the way he flipped is that he was just flying on a plane and he sat next to a gay couple and they changed his mind by the end of the flight.
So personal experience.
Personal experience just absolutely changed his mind.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
You can't beat it.
what the fuck is life without
That's
fucking personal experience?
Right. Well, we think of politics and war and stuff, everything as these calculations, which are true on paper, but we're still all people, and
Yeah.
like we're designed to take these experiences to heart.
Mhm.
It's crazy. Returning to the first mission that Doolittle called off on January 11th, it wasn't a full recall, and while it was brutal for the bombers, it showed what the Mustangs were capable of. Mustangs are another type of fighter, which we'll talk about in a minute. The point-blank target was a fighter production plant in Brunswick, Halberstadt, and Oschleben in central Germany. I hope I pronounce those all incorrectly. The bombers would be escorted by long-range fighters called Mustangs. Unfortunately, the fighters kept returning because they could not find the bombers to escort because, remember, the weather was really bad. The 2nd and 3rd divisions of bombers were returned because of the weather, but not the 1st. Unknown to them, their only support was a single combat wing of the 2nd Division because their commander disregarded the recall order. So essentially, the only reason why one group of bombers has any fighters to protect them is because the fighter that was in charge realized that these bombers were going to be fucked or wanted to go kill some Germans. We don't know why, but he just made the right call. He's like, I'm not leaving them out there by themselves. So, again, a single person just making the right call.
Human experience.
Human experience.
Mm-hmm.
The Luftwaffe sent out basically every fighter that it had to intercept the bombers, and were very surprised to see fighters this far into Germany. So they go out to find the bombers, but now that the fighters are allowed to go ahead, the fighters are ahead of the bombers. So the Luftwaffe come up and they're like, holy shit, they're already here, and it's fighters. That's great.
That's awesome.
Gallard ordered them to ignore fighters and attack the bombers. Right, so that was Gallard's like standing order, which was working really
That's
well.
Smart.
Yep. The bombers were thrown into a 6-hour-long fight. They're saving...
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude.
You can't imagine that, right? 6 hours.
You just casually said that. Oh my god.
So, what was their saving grace? A single Mustang.
No shit.
A single Mustang.
Who's riding it?
A single B-51 bomber No, sorry. So a single P-51 Mustang that found the Luftwaffe after the first assault on the American bombers. Why only one? Because the other 49 that were staying got separated because this weather was so shitty.
The what?
Yeah.
49 went missing? Oh, Jesus.
I was doing a little bit of research because it's hard to understand why the escorts keep getting lost so much. But the way that I understand it is that your bombers go down, let's say your bombers go down like X, right? This path. We'll call it X. The escorts, because of their speed and their tanks, they meet them for part of it and then they go off. And then another group meets them for the second half and then goes off. And so you have like 3 times as many fighters out that day than you do bombers. And because of that, they have to hope that the bombers are where they're supposed to be. And if the weather's bad, they oftentimes can't find them at all. It's really confusing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The Mustangs kind of solve that eventually, but it's very confusing. So the Mustangs pilot, Major James H. Howard, had already proved himself in the Pacific Theater.
Oh, yeah, this dude's
Here's a little face right here. I like this guy. Everybody likes this guy. What's not to like? So, although it went against an order that you're not allowed to engage the enemy without a wingman, that's the fighter policy. So, if you're a fighter pilot, you have to have a wingman to go with you. He went against that order, and he felt it was all up to him. So, he fought them for 30 minutes straight by himself.
This is a Medal of Honor shit.
He fought every single Luftwaffe that there were by himself for 30 minutes.
Do we know how many there were? How many Luftwaffe? Excuse me.
We don't know how many there were, but I know how many he shot down.
Let's get it.
He counted 2 kills and 2 probables, although the crew of the bombers that were like very interested in what he was doing because they were saving his life, they counted at least 6.
Yeah, okay.
His story gets even wilder. 3 of his 4 guns got jammed, but he still did not stop. He shot with 1 gun for the rest of the fight, and he didn't stop until he essentially ran out of fuel. He landed with only 1 hole in his plane, and no bombers from the 401st group, that group he was protecting, none of them died. So he literally saved
lives.
He saved a group of bombers.
Yeah.
And Miller writes, "It was one of the greatest feats of combat flying in the war, and it earned him the Medal of Honor, the only one awarded to a fighter pilot in the European theater."
Yeah, because the other one they were all in
Bombers.
the Pacific.
Yeah, the other fighters were in the Pacific. Because that was gnarly.
So this gentleman, do we know where he lands? Or is it like he dies?
No, he lands.
Oh, okay. Do we know where?
No, I think he had enough fuel to get back to one of the main strips.
What a badass, dude.
Dude, nerves of steel. In his interview, I read through some of his interview. He was just like, it was just up to me. There was nobody else to do it, so I just did it. Yeah.
It's like how you and I are constantly saying, like, when choices are made for me, it's so much easier.
I really feel like that's what he's like, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, cool. I don't have to think.
Yeah, I'm just going to do it as best I can and then be done.
But holy shit, dude. Imagine him waking up that I woke up feeling dangerous.
Yeah,
like,
right?
Oh, man, dude. This guy's going to fucking murder some folks today. And he did.
Unfortunately, this doesn't mean that the overall mission was a resounding success. The 1st Division counted 400 individual attacks. 400 individual attacks were made, which is insane to try and imagine. Mm-hmm. They shot down 60 bombers. That was the same as what Spencer covered in Black Thursday.
It's insane.
On the plus side, the Mustang was a success. Remember how we stressed in the beginning Miller's points that he was making about no fighter being able to match the bomber's speed and range? Well, the Mustang did both of those things. How many Americans would have lived if they produced the Mustangs earlier? And when judging the past, I take the approach of psychologists like Danny Kahneman and Angela Duckworth. Their basic idea is go easy on the mistakes made for the right reasons and go harshly on solutions made for the wrong reasons. For example, judge a quarterback for his choice in throw and the throw itself, regardless of how it actually turned off. This is what I was thinking about how well it turned out. In the Super Bowl, everybody's so like, when I was listening to the announcers and analysts and fans, everybody's so like product driven or like results driven. And it's just weird to me because if it's a good play and something wacky happens, it's still a good play. And yet we still like punish them.
Or a good game.
Yeah. Well, the game was lovely.
Yeah.
But whatever. I forget what part it was in the Super Bowl, but there was a throw and it gets hit off the guy's heel and then it causes a bunch of shenanigans.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But, and people were criticizing the quarterback because it was a bad play or because the play didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it was still a good play. Like,
Right.
the play was good, the route was good, the throw was good. It just, there's so many variables.
Right. Yeah.
And, we're judging things incorrectly when we do that.
That is a really good analogy.
Thanks.
Yeah, good job.
It took me forever to think of a sports analogy.
It was topical.
The football one.
Yeah, good job. Kevin watched sports, everybody.
I did it. I like watching sports. I just don't have a team. So using this lens... Oh, wait. I think I have a slide. Yeah. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, Thinking Fast and Slow is the heavy hitter book for it. And then Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, is also really good. They both cover similar things.
Maybe one day Kevin and I will have a book club series where we just tell you guys what books are about.
Yeah. We should do that.
You just mentioned these two in our war. Like,
Yep.
yeah, it's fucking cool.
So using this lens, it looks like the Bomber Mafia was as close to objectively wrong as you can be about fighter escorts and a quick, decisive end to the war through bombing, right? That was their thesis going into it. Yes, they did end up fixing both of these things and helped win the war. But we should recognize this mistake and not repeat it. Why do I keep coming back and harping on this point every episode? I have wondered that myself. I think it is because I see my own faults in the Mitchell and Bomber Mafia thinking. When you create a novel solution to a complex problem, which Mitchell and them did, the Bomber Mafia did, you want to use it. The danger, however, is that you narrow your focus too far and ignore or warp relevant data that doesn't support your solutions. It is sobering to see those dealing in life and death falling into the same traps that I find myself in. Because I find it with teaching all the time. I come up with a novel solution, and then I kind of catch myself trying to tweak data to fit that this solution is novel and it is good and correct. And I'm like, well, the stakes are low because it's just, small percentage points on students writing paragraphs. But if it can happen to these guys that are dealing with millions of dollars and
life and death,
how much Nazi Germany gets to conquer the world.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's an incredible correlation, dude.
Yeah.
It's a good bit.
Strategy time.
This is a gif of a cat reading a military strategy book, and I'm into it.
It's my new...
I like it.
Whenever I go over tactics now, this is my cat.
Where the fuck did you find that?
I just searched up.
That's
gifs.
pretty solid.
Yeah, that one's great. According to Miller, America has used a strategy called MASS. Have you heard of MASS when you were in intelligence?
No, I don't think so. What does it stand for?
Nothing. It just merely means mass, like the weight of something, like the mass of something. But it's the strategy. It's called MASS.
No.
It's the application of overwhelming force, and they started using it. America started using it in the Civil War. In the context of the 8th, the idea was that the Mustangs were strong enough to force the Luftwaffe out of existence. So essentially, we will use the mass of the Mustangs to force the mass of the Luftwaffe out. And then everything else, who gives a shit?
Okay.
Which is, it sounds really simple, but when you start thinking about the logistics and the casualties you're going to suffer doing that, it's kind of crazy, kind of a crazy strategy that America's been employing. But it does make sense when you think about the Civil War. We absolutely used that in the Civil War.
That makes a lot of sense.
The plan was simple. Bombers would bait planes by trying to blow up aircraft factories. Then the Mustangs would clean house. Why did America think this plan would work? Because of the art of war. They were literally quoting the art of war in Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu, yeah.
And the quote that they kept coming back to was, the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy itself, which is one of the most badass lines of the whole book. And it's true. Since Germany made factories to produce aircraft, it would have to defend them.
Yeah.
Right? It seems so simple, but it's only simple in hindsight.
Yeah.
Anderson, the mind behind this plan, was willing to lose 2/3 of all crews to accomplish the task. That would be 7,000 men. Grim calculus indeed.
7,000?
He was willing to lose 7,000 men to use this mass strategy. Because the strategy sounds great until you start looking at the casualties you would expect.
Yeah. Fuck.
Okay. that my timeline? Yeah. Let's move up on our timeline to June 5th, 1944. For those that are not World War II nerds, this is the day before the invasion of Normandy, D-Day. General Eisenhower, when speaking to the troops, told them, "If you see fighting aircraft over you, they will be ours." Turns out, this was wishful thinking. Which Spencer and I didn't know. I did not know that before reading this chapter. This D-Day chapter was illuminating. America was not 100% if they had actually wiped out the Luftwaffe before this point. I'll repeat that. During D-Day, when we're sending men in on an 18-mile front that we essentially create on the sea, and we're shoving all these men in, we are afraid that a billion Luftwaffe are going to appear out of nowhere and kill everybody.
Yeah.
That was one of the contingencies, and there wasn't an answer for it.
No.
That's wild to me. That's a gamble. I don't often think about gambles like that.
D-Day is nuts. And I didn't, it's obviously extremely popular, but once you do the smallest bit of research on it, you're like, oh.
It's still not explored correctly, fully.
Right. Did not realize it was this much of a, the magnitude of it all. The vastness.
Yes. I know. Crazy. Okay, luckily, they essentially had destroyed the Luftwaffe. So, how did we get there? Well, let's go back to February. And this is the start of what we call Big Week. So, in February, there was a 6-day period. They called it Big Week. Miller defines Big Week as a 6-day-long campaign that was fought all over Western Europe from the North Sea to the Danube, from Paris to Poland. So, everywhere. So all of Europe is essentially on fire for 6 days. And I know there's Eastern Europe and there's a bunch of stuff over there too, but from where our story's taking place, everywhere that our story has taken place so far is all on fire at the same time. Day 1's target was the fighter production plant in Brunswick, Leipzig area in central Germany.
Leipzig.
Mm-hmm. It was a clear day when 800 of Zemke's Thunderbolts equipped with 150-gallon fuel tanks took flight. They caught up and took the left side of the bomber formation, 30 miles west of Hanover. A group of Messerschmitts BF-110s engaged with the Thunderbolt formation, commanded by Gabretsky. Out of the 19 German fighters that they engaged with, only one was able to escape undamaged.
Bleh. Bleh.
Dude, this is such a change from earlier. That's crazy. So 20 German fighters came up and 19 of them got hit.
Yeah.
That's a very different story from the stories we've been telling up until this point.
Substantial.
Yeah. For that day, the total American victories were 61. And victories, I think, means shooting down the other plane.
That's absurd. It's an absurd number.
Compared to just getting hit the whole time. Yeah. I'm just thinking about your episode. It was, I don't know. What a change.
Yeah, a lot of casualties.
Now we're going to talk about this one because there were 3 Medal of Honors given.
Woo!
And Spencer and I have been talking. The Medal of Honors that we've covered so far, at least, have all been exceptional. I think a lot of awards are dumb and accomplishments are transient, right? They're all just fleeting, silly things that we do to I don't know why people need it. I need it sometimes. It's just a thing. But the Medal of Honor stories are fantastic. So
they just are.
The people who are choosing who gets them are really good, and the stories they help curate are really good. And they really do exemplify things that I think of when I think of American heroism.
Hell yeah.
Our first story was referenced in the show. Kind of both were, but the first one definitely was. So this would be episode 4, I think.
4 comes
Maybe
out
3.
tonight.
Okay. An unnamed bomber, so the bomber didn't have a name, was hit by 12 fighters, hitting 8 of the 10 crewmen. It's crazy. 2 sentences right there. The co-pilot was hit, and he slumped on the controls, sending the plane into a straight dive bomb. So that happens in Masters of the Air, and they do a good job showing, like, getting them off of it and stuff.
Yeah.
An injured pilot, one Lieutenant William R. Lawley, had to wrestle his dead friend off of the controls while steering the plane. Dead weight is no joke.
Yeah.
When I was a lifeguard in high school, they made us bring up a dummy from 12 feet deep in the pool.
Oh, damn.
And it was quite the shock for me realizing how heavy and awkwardly distributed the weight of a person truly is. I never realized, because when you do weights like in a gym, like, the weights are really nicely distributed. It's balanced and it makes sense, and you can lift quite a bit, even more than you think you can. But when you lift the dummy and it's 150, 160 pound dummy, you're like, holy crap, like, I don't know what I can do with this. And then swimming up with it is like, lifting it all the way up.
For sure, that sounds hard as fuck.
Yeah.
In boot camp, we have this thing during our like final exercise where if you do something stupid, they make you drag a dummy back and forth down this like football field.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it sucks, but swimming sounds way harder.
Yeah, and I was not a good swimmer. Lawley ordered the men to bail out, but when he learned how damaged two of his gunners were, he rescinded the order and decided to try to make the 5-hour flight home with a flaming engine. Blood covered all over the controls. He couldn't see anything, and there's no windscreen anymore because the flak that hit them, or the fighters that hit them, blew it up. That's how his co-pilot died. That's crazy. I think one guy did jump out when he gave the order. So basically, he gives the order. One guy, I think, jumps out, but then somebody else calls him. He's like, I can't get these gunners out. They're just shot to hell. And so he's like, fuck it, and turned it off.
Can you imagine how pissed that guy must have been who
I know.
jumped out?
He jumped out over central Germany.
Dude.
I don't know. When he's watching the plane, even he's watching it fly back, but it's on fire, and he knows there's no windscreen over the cockpit.
Yeah, I made the right decision.
It's a coin flip anyway.
Yeah, for sure. It's fucked regardless.
Here is how crazy that it got. Lawley is the pilot, but he keeps passing out. And so a crew member has to essentially stand behind the cockpit so that they don't pass out. And then every time he passes out, they run in and shake him back awake. And then he wakes up and then flies for a little bit more before he passes out again. They had to keep reviving him back to life. They landed with one engine, no wheels, and an insane amount of sparks everywhere. But he saved everybody on board. And I really love the part that Miller threw in about these guys meeting. So one of the gunner, Broswell, he saw Lawley and Laley in 1999, and he said, this is a quote from him, he had arthritis, but after I shook his hands, I said, they're beautiful. They saved my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love
that's
that.
Awesome.
That is a really, man.
Yeah, that's great. Can you imagine?
No. Just the heroism there.
Yeah, it's so amazing.
And it seems like, he didn't do a lot. He did so much. Like, those decisions were, I don't know.
Yeah,
they're
that's
hard.
incredible.
He could have easily made an easier choice many times. And those are long flights, like we said. He's in central Germany. Everybody in Germany wants to kill him.
It reminds me of, God, what is his name? I think it's like Mike Duncan from Black Hawk Down, the dude who gets saved by those two Army Rangers. Those dudes get the Medal of Honor for like saving his life, essentially.
That was
insane.
That was an insane. They do a good job in the movie of showing those two guys.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the second and third ones they're not as positive. I mean, they're still absolutely heroes. I'm just fair warning on this because this one's hard. So the second and third medals were given to two members of the bomber that was called 10 Horsepower, which is a fun name. Getting hit by a shell from a 109, an explosion killed the co-pilot, Ronald Bartley, and knocked out the pilot, Richard C. Nelson. Just like the last story, their bodies went over the column and sent the plane into a dive. This dive was wild. Like, it went on for too long. It was absolute chaos for multiple minutes, until the crewman, Carl Moore, crawled from his turret all the way up to the cockpit. They dropped something like 15,000 feet. And they were spinning while going down. And Carl Moore was trying to crawl through it, and he's like, it's essentially you're stuck in the Gravitron from the county fair.
That sounds awful.
He took stock of the scene. There's no windscreen. The co-pilot's head is on the ground, and the pilot is missing half of his face and presumed dead.
Fuck.
Somehow, I have no idea how he did this. He must have had just the most adrenaline in the world. He used his elbows to push off the bodies while he lifted both of the yokes with his hands. It's wild to think about the strength needed to do such a maneuver.
Yeah.
He gave control over to the navigator, Walter Trumper. Archie Mathis joined to help because he had a couple hours of flying experience, which is the most.
A couple hours.
It was the most that anybody left alive had. So he was their guy. So they right the plane, they level it out, they're starting to fly, and they move the co-pilot's body so they can sit there, and they start to move the pilot's body. When the crew tried to move Nelson, they realized that he was still alive, barely. Like, he's probably not going to make it. He's missing essentially half of his face. The first attempt to land, but they fly all the way back. It's wild. They have to do rotating shifts on the flight back, same as the other one. It's not good. It's very, very intense. They do make it back, and their first attempt to land was ruined by what Miller called fatigue and exposure. The damage has been done. They've been sitting in this exposed air, and they have no idea what they're doing. They have a couple hours of flight experience. Carl Moore and the others were ordered to bail out of the plane. And then another B-17 came up to help, but it wasn't able to do much. They tried to I think literally lift it and right it and move it, but they couldn't really make that happen. The second landing attempt also failed. Mathis was ordered to put it on autopilot, point it to the sea, and then jump out of the airplane.
That's right. Yeah.
Both men replied that the pilot was still alive and they're not going to leave him. So, tragically, on the third attempt to land, it ends in a crash landing, killing Mathis and Trumper instantly. The pilot, I think, did survive for a couple hours. They tried their fucking best to keep that guy alive. They were both awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. That's a harder story, but it's still all the things that you want in your men, right? That's still American valor right there. Jesus.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Okay, overall, the losses started to diminish quickly. So I think on that one, 21 bombers and 4 fighters, and 200 of the 11,000 men were casualties. So significantly less casualties than the winter campaign. So things are starting to kind of take the turn. The Germans lost 153 fighters. So Germans are taking the hit right now. Miller cautions us not to see it too optimistically. Instead, and I like Miller here, it's probably his best writing. He reminds us of the men in the plane taking the hits and watching their friends go down next to them. So even though things are looking better, Miller kind of breaks his little academic writing to say, just so we're clear.
This still sucks ass.
Yeah, it's still the worst experience for these guys. They are still getting hit by bullets all the time, and they're still watching their friends die right in front of them. And I really appreciate that.
That is important. Yeah.
And after the fact, we know that the rest of the big week did not go so well. Miller reports that at least 226 heavies went down. The results of Big Week? Well, they wanted to cripple aircraft manufacturing with the 10,000 tons of explosives that they dropped. And the RAF dropped even more than 10,000 tons. 10,000 tons. They're dropping way more than what Hiroshima's atomic bomb had.
Yeah.
I think. Overall. I forget what the exact number is.
As far as weight, you're saying?
Yeah, tonnage.
Yeah.
What's the tonnage of that atomic bomb?
It's not 20,000 pounds.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. They caused, in total, after all that, a 2-month delay. So
a 2-month delay as in they shortened the length of the war?
No, a 2-month delay of aircraft manufacturing being on target.
That's wonderful.
No.
Are you saying a 2-month delay of the Germans manufacturing aircrafts?
But they were supposed to stop it.
I see.
That was their plan.
Okay.
So a 2-month delay is
Okay, so this is the biggest problem with this whole fucking operation is that Americans don't understand that they need to keep hitting the same target over and over again.
Yep. I am not a historian, and I am definitely not a World War II expert, so take what I say next with the biggest grains of salt because I'm going to kind of go into my own views on this stuff. So I really do think with my current evidence, and if you have better evidence, please send it my way. I've been really ingesting it. It's been Germany is far more fascinating than I realized, because Nazi Germany, in my mind now, is currently just playing dress up to try to be the World War I Germany in the Wehrmacht. Like, the Wehrmacht and World War I Germany is frighteningly intense. Like, they are so much scarier to me than World War II Nazi Germany. Like, by
warriors, you mean?
Yeah,
like
they were absolute, just intense guys. They would go and pour concrete and set up artilleries off the concrete. They would pour, like, who does anything like that? Like, I've never heard of anything like that in modern day fighting. Like the idea of, going with a contractor and like setting up a field. Like, we need it perfectly level so we can just fuck up everything over there. Like, Jesus Christ. But Nazi Germany was an absolute powerhouse when it came to their creative solutions to industry. They created smaller secret factories in the forest that were able to keep productions online. And we never found them during the war. Although, it might be more fair to say that it held off their defeat. For Big Week, Miller says, Big Week was neither victory nor loss for the Americans. It was merely the opening engagement of what would be the most prolonged and decisive air battle of World War II. And Nazi Germany definitely can't compete with the Wehrmacht of World War I. But their Luftwaffe were incredibly impressive at the start of World War II. They just couldn't keep it up. Tactics time. Before the battle over Berlin that was about to begin, the 8th used feint raids to confuse the Nazis. So this is something that we haven't covered in depth yet because it's super complicated.
A feint raid?
Yeah, of just how it all works. We talked about the basics, that the bombers take off from different airstrips, and then they all meet up at a location, and they all fly. But there's also like a ton more that they do. Their courses are crazy because they want to throw off where Germany's going to launch their defense. And so they're constantly doing like fake outs. They will like go one direction for a couple miles and then suddenly switch. They're trying to mess with them. And that's going to be important because now with this new strategy, they're just going to fly straight in.
Yeah, let's do it.
The risk to the bombers was the point. Like, the point is we want them to target our bombers.
Yeah.
It would allow the Mustangs to do their job. Losses be damned. An aide asked that liberators not fly the mission because it would be suicide given liberators couldn't fly high enough to keep out of, the flak fire and stuff. And this aide was met with the response, well, that was it.
Well,
he was like, that's the point.
Yeah.
Holy
that's
shit.
What we're doing. Gee whiz.
That's crazy. What a... I don't know.
I just don't know anything in modern times that we can compare that
No,
to.
right? Like, that's foreign alien...
That is such an inhumane thing to do.
Yeah.
To your own
Man.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, The Right Stuff.
Yeah. Have you seen The Right Stuff?
Dude, yes, it is such a... Have you?
No.
It's hella fun.
Okay, I have to watch it now.
Yeah, watch the new one. There's two.
They're both good?
I haven't seen the original, but the newest one on Disney Plus is fucking hella good.
Okay, I'll watch it. I'll watch it now because we're going to talk about Chuck Yeager now, the inspiration for it. And Chuck Yeager is the boy. So the inspiration for the film The Right Stuff, Chuck Yeager, was shot down in Germany during one of these Berlin strikes. I say Berlin strikes because I'm kind of glossing over the fact that the Berlin fight is just one super long fight. It's like multiple missions. It's nonstop. It's just this weird multi-day, multi-mission thing.
Yeah, that's where my wife's grandfather was shot over during the Berlin.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was over Berlin.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Then this Chuck Yeager story is going to be intense.
Mm-hmm.
So Chuck Yeager, his story is amazing as I'm going to be simplifying so much of his story and it's not going to sound real. And I promise you, I've made it more realistic, like watered down than what he actually did. Okay. He's wild. He's just a wild human. So he lived off the land at first. He just was like, I'm from a farm. And so he just started hunting game and catching rabbits and stuff. Like, okay. He stayed with the motherfucking Marquise. So the Marquise, for those that don't know, I didn't know, they're like the French terrorists so when France got taken over, they just went and hid in the Alps and then they just started terrorizing Nazis. And so they're like, when Spencer and I have talked a lot recently about how France is more badass than we give them credit for.
I'm trying to tell you.
These dudes are the creme de la creme.
Okay.
like they're they're getting support by America, and they are absolutely terrorists, meaning that they're giving up their Geneva Convention rights.
Okay.
And that becomes a point of contention.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, especially when Nazis are involved.
Yes, sir.
When he was living with the Marquise, he became their fuse man for bombing.
No shit.
Yeah, for bomb making.
Mm-hmm.
Not for very long, but he was just like, while I'm here, I might as well be useful. I'll give up my Geneva Convention protections and just help them terrorize Nazis. Like, the dude's crazy.
This is a Tarantino movie.
It is. Well, because just wait. Just like a Tarantino movie is going to keep going up. He then climbs a 7,000-foot mountain in a storm on foot. He jumps out of a window as his cabin is being shot up by German patrols. So, like, he climbs this mountain with this other guy. They go into the cabin. They try to get some sleep because it's been like 3 days of like hiking. Then they just start getting shot up by a German patrol. So they just sprint and break the glass and jump out the back window, essentially. In my head, they do. They may push it open, but who cares? They run and jump out of it. Then they ride a log down the rest of the mountain.
They ride like Splash Mountain?
Like Splash Mountain.
Okay.
Then his friend gets hit. So he pulls his unconscious friend across a lake by swimming across the lake with his unconscious friend in tow in Germany in the winter. And then he climbs down the mountain and then he walks into town. What? Who is this guy?
Yeah, that's dope.
This guy's crazy. He ends up doing a ton more too. Like, that's why he is the inspiration for The Right Stuff. Like, he ends up doing a bunch of like stunt, like speed trials and stuff, I think. He's very, very, very interesting. Another exceptional human that randomly is in the 8th Air Force because everyone exceptional in this time period somehow is in the 8th Air
Just
Force.
Wound up in the 8th Air Force. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just crazy. Any questions on the Chuck Yeager story?
No, but I want to go rewatch The Right Stuff now.
Yeah. Let's back up to the day after Chuck was shot down, though, because that was a few days, Chuck's whole story. It was like a week.
Okay. Where are we?
So we're in Berlin. This is Berlin in
Look how
1944.
beautiful it is.
Berlin Cultural Center. We have the biggest battle ever over Berlin. The New York Times reported that 600,000 men and women on both sides were engaged in this battle.
6,000.
No, 600,000.
Whoa. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
500,000 people.
Yeah, more than 500,000.
Are engaged in this in some capacity, which is, again, just wild. Here is what Tommy Lamore, a Cherokee gunner, wrote. So Tommy Lamore, Cherokee gunner, his family survived the Trail of Tears. Like, he is an interesting guy. Okay. But here's his quote. "This was Hitler's town. The big bad boy lived in this neighborhood. Go ahead, send the Luftwaffe up. Go ahead, shoot at us with everything you've got. But here we are, blowing up your house in front of your master race eyeballs.
Yeah.
I cheered when the bombs left the racks. Hold on to your sauerkraut, Adolf." He's probably a lot of fun to hang out with.
Yeah, that's great. Hold on to your sauerkraut. Yeah. It's, God, it doesn't feel bad being racist towards Germans. It really doesn't.
Not in this exact time period.
No.
The Luftwaffe came up and took out 20 bombers in 25 minutes from the 13th Combat Wing. That's hard. So that would explain things like your father-in-law or your grandpa. 20 in 25 minutes. That's crazy.
That's insane.
The Air Force claims that the Mustangs got 179 of the 400 Luftwaffe that were in the air that day. And so they're probably embellishing a little bit, but probably not a whole lot at this point. Yeah. So they took out a little bit less than half of all the Luftwaffe that were protecting Berlin. And at this time, Hitler has essentially put all defenses in Berlin. He's like putting everything in Berlin. That's what he cares about.
He's viewing this as like the stronghold.
Yeah. Kind of going back to your point about would the civilians help him manufacture if he called it earlier. He wants the civilian morale to be higher. So even though he should be protecting military targets more, he wants like people to love him and like follow him. Which is kind of interesting because he's supposed to have the supreme power, but you're still at the will of the people at the end of the day.
The will of the people.
The battle was so fierce that the fighters reported being close enough to see into each other's eyes.
Jesus Christ.
In a friggin' plane!
Yeah, dude, that's crazy.
And then things just, it's hard because 2 days later, they had to do it all over again.
Again.
Again. Well, and how does Dan Carlin say again? Do you know this joke yet?
No.
Again. Again and again and again.
Okay. Hey, this is a sports movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's about hockey.
Oh, yeah, wait. That's a good movie.
Miracle.
Yeah. The bombers were hurting. Some crews had 50% losses 2 days ago and had to find a way to do it all again.
Again.
Again. This time, they lost 37 bombers and 18 fighters. But they were able to actually hit the same target multiple times to do real damage to industry and fighters.
Let's go.
Yep. So they're doing it. They're doing the thing that we were critiquing them for not doing.
But they're losing, you said 30 some odd bombers?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, and just that, I just feel so bad for the pilots. Losing half of your crew, so half of the bunks are empty. Like literally just like logistically, half of your bunks are empty. You go to sleep, you wake up, and you get told you have to do it again the next morning.
Yeah.
That's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
So the pilots were given a new medicine.
What do we got?
Whiskey.
Oh, not cocaine. Okay.
Yeah, they're getting medical prescriptions of whiskey at this point.
Yes, sir. I was listeners, the other day, I was texting Kevin, and I was like, after reading chapter 10, I was like, oh, they were just drunk the whole time? Like, this doesn't sound that bad.
It's hard. Some of them are drunk flying.
Yeah,
some of them are...
You have to be.
Yeah. But, like Spencer was saying, it's working. The Luftwaffe were disappearing, and the losses continued as well. In April, 409 bombers would be lost for the 8th. The mental fatigue grew on the men. Like we talked about earlier, the 25 mission count rose at this time. Men were given 30 mission count in less than 2 months. Sorry, I'm going to back up on the last part because I said it too fast. So the mission count raised, but there's so many missions that they're flying them on to do these repeated bombings, which they need to do, that where it would take multiple months to get your 25, they're doing 30 in less than 2 months. Yeah. There's only 30 days in a month.
Exactly, yeah, I was just going to say that.
The math isn't mathing. That's a lot of missions.
There's a lot of missions.
Everyone was flying, and binge drinking became the way many men coped with trying to hit the 30 mark. Miller does push on that point back eventually, saying like, yes, that's true, but also trying to get the 30 is the real thing that kept the men going. Mm-hmm. Like, for some people, yes, drinking. That's always going to be the case.
But don't undermine the fact that these men are fighting a war for a country with a mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's an end in sight for them. They have to fly 30 missions and they're done. And so what they would say is they have to do their 25 and they have to do their 5. Fucking Doolittle.
Mm-hmm. Fucking Doolittle.
Okay, here comes another weird part. Everybody's just in the 8th Air Force. Because who stepped in to help fix the morale?
Charlie Chapman. Oh,
Jimmy motherfucking
That's
Stewart.
Right, Jimmy Stewart. Oh, it looks like a mushroom cloud.
Jimmy Stewart, guys. The guy from It's a Wonderful Life and The Better movie. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh, she said yes. Clarence.
I do not yield.
That's an incredible movie.
It's an amazing movie.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington's awesome.
Apparently, he fought hard to get accepted as a pilot and to be put in harm's way. They wouldn't take him. He didn't weigh enough. It's just... I didn't know. I didn't know Jimmy Stewart was the real deal. He's the real deal.
Yeah, me neither.
He led the 100th back to good discipline. So remember, the 100th is the bloody 100th. That's the one that's taking a lot of the focus in Masters of the Air show. It's the one we keep going back to when we're talking about these different characters. He also had help. It's a lot of Jimmy Stewart, but it's also a lot of this guy named Rose Rosenthal. Like, he does a ton of stuff too. But Jimmy Stewart's the guy we know by face, so he's the one that's on the slide. And to say that they fixed the morale is perhaps too generous. They helped, but losing less planes on missions was the only real solution. Yeah, we'll go here. This came in May, as the 8th began bombing railways, bridges, and oil factories in preparation for D-Day. So this is the stuff Spencer and I said we weren't really aware of. There's so much bombing in this time period, from what is it, February to June, and they are bombing everything.
Yeah.
Everything, all possible infrastructure that they can. They're having these different ideas, and so they're just doing it all. You could, if you dive into it, there are some things that are getting more bombed and more attention than the others, but for our sakes and this narrative, we don't really need to go into those weeds. What is fascinating is that how much it worked and how much it probably saved D-Day. Because one German commander was convinced that he would have repelled the Normandy invasion if the bombers hadn't destroyed his supply line so completely. He was like, if I could have got my men back, and if I could have got my supplies, my ammo, we would have pushed them back. Like, absolutely. We had such a good position over them. We had elevation, and they were coming in amphibious assault, which is a historically hard maneuver.
Yes. I wouldn't have wanted to do it.
No! The losses were great, and the war was changing. And I'm just going to end with this quote from Lieutenant Bert Stiles, because I think he sums it up really well. Blood is the same whether it spills on aluminum or Normandy mud. And later he also writes, win. Win in any way so that there's never another one.
All skin is equal when burned.
Ooh, that's good.
It's metal. That's a metal quote. That's a very metal thing that he just said.
It's a very metal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So,
yikes.
D-Day.
Whoo! So yeah, we'll be picking back up around, because we don't really, D-Day's sort of
kind of
glossed over ish.
Yeah,
he covers it a little bit. It's not the same. It's not from the ground perspective.
Nope.
So we'll be picking back up in a couple weeks. I believe I will be picking back up like 2 days after D-Day.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. So crazy shit. This episode had a lot. It's going to get heavier too.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we hope you really enjoyed our first 3 or 4 episodes, because there was a lot of jokes. These ones are going to be a little bit more informative and hard to swallow.
Yep. We snuck some jokes in today.
Yeah, there was some good stuff in there. But when you're talking about, I don't know, there was like 4 instances of medals of honor that you were talking about.
The decapitated heads.
Decapitated heads. Lots of, figuring out how they piss in the air and shit.
Yep.
So, thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
I hope you guys are enjoying this. Me and Kevin are fucking adoring this experience. So it's been really fun. We got links to all of our in the bio. If you're listening to this, open up our bio on this episode, and you'll see links to our Patreon, our website, our social media, all the things. We got extra content on Patreon. If you guys like what we're doing, you would like all the stuff on there.
Yep.
Thank you from the bottom of our souls for listening.
Absolutely.
We're what episode is this? About 5?
This is part 5.
Part 5.
Episode 51.
So I think we got like 4 or 5 episodes left.
I think we only have 2.
Oh, is that it?
I think so.
So we only have like 2 episodes left. Something like that.
Oh, wait. Okay, hold on. I'll tell you right now.
He's tripping.
We have part 6, part 7, part 8, and part 9.
Yeah, so we'll have 4 more episodes after
Dang!
this. It's a big book.
I forget this book's
dense.
like almost 1,000 pages.
It's dense, yeah. our a gentleman who's going to be on this show soon, his name's Andrew. Shout out to hi Andrew. He was like, I was like, oh, we're going to start reading your book soon. He's like, yeah, it'll go quicker than Masters of the Air. So, thank you guys for being a part of this. It's been hella fun.
Reach out, talk to us.
Reach out, talk to us, dude. Yeah.
This takes so much of our time.
I don't think people understand.
But it like in like the best way. Like I don't mean it as like a
no. None of this is my like, God damn it, now I have to edit stuff or read stuff.
Yeah. We have good series coming up after this too.
Yeah,
we have a couple cool ideas that we're fleshing out.
Things are happening.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere.
We're having a lot of fun.
Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate the shit out of you. We'll see you next week, and until then, bonsai.